Welcome back to the Holistic Health Bites podcast. Today, we're going to have a fun conversation around kind of self-love and the side that's more like the emotional and self-care side of things as you are approaching your health journey. So I'm welcomed with special guest Thais Harris. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's so exciting. So will you just kind of tell everybody quickly about yourself and maybe a little bit of your story?
Yes, happily. I'm Thais Harris. I'm a board certified holistic nutritionist, and I help women love themselves into their ideal body, vibrant health, and an outstanding life. I am an author and a speaker, and I wrote a children's book that was self-published called Little Red. And I co-wrote with another 21 collaborators a book called The Life-Changing Power of Self-Love, which is a really beautiful book and with women in all modalities of healing and healing practices, sharing from the heart their own path to self-love. And I have presented in the US and internationally on the topic of diet as our daily intake of everything, which I hope we'll get to talk a little bit about today,
Yes, of
with
course.
collaboration of my husband, Nick Shawley, who's a somatic psychotherapist. Yeah.
I love it. I love that definition of diet. I think that's such a healthier approach to it, that rather focusing on, getting all the things in instead of all the things you can't have. I think that's great. And we will for sure dive in because I want to know all the things about how that came to be and how you specifically apply it. So let's start a little bit first with the self-love side of things. How did you get into that, and why do you find that that's such an important aspect to focus on?
Mm. You know, one thing I found out in over 12 years of doing this work and working with over 500 women ages 20 to 82 is that most women have a deep dissatisfaction for some part of their body or an aspect of their health. And when I started looking into this, I saw numbers that were pretty astounding, like statistics anywhere from 60% to 97% of women having some sort of I hate my body type of thought every day. So that is pretty wild, and I think some of that is from external influences, media, everything else. Obviously, they see that the longer somebody spends watching TV, for example, the more dissatisfied they are with how they look, which is an interesting correlation. But I really found that in the work that I'm doing with clients, and I've worked with different populations for 5 years, I worked with cancer patients, and that there was always this little piece that was about beyond mindfulness, but that it was really about building a different type of love for themselves that improved their health outcomes. And so it's been the joy of my work in my life to actually help women not just eat the right thing and do the right movement, but to actually appreciate and love themselves from the get-go and use that power as the thing that actually fuels their journey. And what I mean by that is that instead of waiting, putting conditions on our love and waiting out, when I lose the weight, then I'll feel good about myself. When I, get stronger, I'll be happy. When I, this, then that, we start actually working with strategies that include breathing, meditation, visualization, so that they can connect with the version of themselves that's already there, with all the reasons why they are already amazing and worthy of their own unconditional love. And it changes the journey because now they're not doing things because I said so, or because their doctor said so, or because they need to punish themselves because they ate the dessert and now, oh my God, like the decisions they make are not coming from that place. They're coming from a place of care and deep appreciation. And yeah.
I love it. So there's a lot of terms in this space that maybe get a little confusing. So can we just talk a little bit about like self-love versus self-esteem versus self-acceptance, and what the differences are and why they're different? They all sound so similar.
So It's interesting. There's been so many books in these topics. A really good one is called The Body is Not an Apology. And she explores a lot of like self-acceptance specifically. And so I'm going to get into that. And then one of my teachers that I learned so much from is Tara Brach. And she's a meditation teacher, mindfulness. And she talks a lot about self-esteem, right? And self-respect. And so I love bringing all that together because I believe that self-love is like the umbrella that holds all of those pieces. And that when we can create practices so that self-love becomes a daily practice, it's not just, oh, I love myself. Of course I love myself. Okay, I'm done. It's like, no, every day there's some curves that get, that show up along the road that makes us question that love, or that even catching a reflection in the mirror and going, ugh, or like, oh, I look horrible, or looking at a photo, and going, oh, my thighs look so big, or what, delete this photo, right? Sometimes our first instinct is to want to delete it because we see something about ourselves that we really dislike. If we start working on cultivating self-love as a daily practice, we start changing those patterns. And that increases naturally our self-esteem because now we're, feeling the love very much like the love we feel for our best friend or for our partner or for our child, where it's like, it doesn't matter. They may do things that they get frustrated about that we find are cute, adorable, whatever. What happens when we cultivate that self-love? We start having those moments with ourselves, and forgiveness comes quicker, and the self-acceptance comes quicker. Because acceptance, I think, is really about accepting reality as is, accepting the present moment as is, and accepting ourselves as we are. It doesn't mean we're not going to want to strive to be that best version of ourselves, but it means that we're okay. Like this, this is my essence. This is my condition in this moment. There's always room for improvement. And then self-esteem, I think, is what helps us go, oh, I'm going to take that next step. And then I'm going to take the next big leap. And then, but that the definition, I feel like self-love is the big umbrella that then holds the self-esteem, which is the building blocks. Self-esteem can also sometimes come as external validation, right? If some of us build our self-esteem based on things that we've done, accomplished, have been part of, or have received sort of kudos for. And those are all fine too. It doesn't need to be only internal. But I think the internal piece is the love. And then the acceptance comes from some of that mindfulness and being in the present moment, and being okay with reality, not wishing it was different.
Yeah, I think that's a great definition. And I would agree. I think self-love is kind of that place that we all want to get to, where we're just really in love with our lives, our bodies, our characteristics, our personality, just all the things. And yeah, acceptance almost sounds in some ways a little bit defeating. Like you just have to accept where you're at and it is what it is and you can't change it, which is not at all what it actually means. But I think that that's the first thing that pops in my head when I hear of acceptance is just like, yep, this is me. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And so that almost like defeats you from wanting to strive for more. And I think we should always be striving for more, no matter where you're at. Even if you do have really great self-love, you can still always improve. You can still always, notch up a level. There's just always, growth that can happen. And so I think looking at it from that lens of true self-love is really valuable because then you can see, because I love myself, because I love my body, because I love my life, I want it to be better. I want to share it with more people. I want it to be bigger and out there. And I think that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, so much so that, there was a book called If the Buddha Came to Dinner by Sophia Hale Schatz. I believe it's Hale, not Hale. So I hope I'm saying that right. But she used to talk to her groups of people that she would work with. And she would ask, who's the person you most admire in the world? And imagine they're coming over for dinner. And so in her case, the Buddha, it could be Elvis, it could be, whoever, Oprah. And they're coming to dinner. And her question was, well, how would you set your table? What food would you make for them? Would you just go to the corner store and grab some like boxed items, and throw them together? Or would you like put something together with a lot of love? And would you make sure it's a food that would keep them both satisfied, but awake, not tired right after, so that you could pick their brain? All these little questions about somebody we really care about and want to learn from. And then she would ask, well, you are that Buddha, Elvis, Oprah. Like, what if you put yourself in that place? How would you treat yourself? And I love that. It was such a great question that for me was a pivotal moment when I decided to go back to school to study nutrition. I was a graphic designer and an actress, and that was like my previous lifetime. And that book really changed something for me, because that's when I started thinking about, like, oh yeah, how am I caring for myself and treating myself with respect and admiration and love? And then a few years down the road, I had a skin cancer, and it manifested as this big black mole right in the middle of my face. And I could not see it, right? It was every day, every glimpse in the mirror. And I started noticing that little voice that just went, ugh. There was disgust, there was fear. What did this mean? My dad had died of a very aggressive cancer. And so having even an unrelated thing that was happening on my skin just felt like I could feel myself going into worst case scenario of, like, what if this is just one of many? And so I had to actively create a path to quiet those voices down, to sort of remove, because I was noticing how much stress that was creating in my body. It's funny, even talking about it now, I'm like, oh yeah, there's all this, like, and there are so many things that happen biologically when we are beating ourselves up, or feeling the sense of disgust, or going into the I never get it right, or I always do it wrong, or any of those aggressive, sort of violent, some people might not think they're violent, but they're aggressive thoughts towards ourselves. And our bodies recognize that as stress as much as if our boss was yelling at us, or, the good old tiger running after us. And so there's a whole cascade of inflammation. I mean, our vagus nerve is affected, our breaths are affected, our hormones. I mean, the list goes on. That if we can stop those thoughts, if we can stop that notion of disgust or self-loathing, stop that in its track, replace that with a loving thought or a loving mantra or a loving activity, then we're doing ourselves a great service. And then instead of putting obstacles in our healing journey, we're actually clearing the path. Because, and I've heard this said many times before, we can't heal a body we hate,
Yes.
right?
100%. And we also can't really be in like an angry, spiteful, disgusting place if we're in a place of gratitude. Like, just being in the place of gratitude for your body, for your life, for your health, for your family, for your friends, for your environment, for the country you live in, whatever, it like makes the hate go away, even if just for a moment. But the longer you can stay in that place of gratitude, the less you'll be in all those stressed out states. So I think that's a powerful message as well.
Yeah, that's so big. And I think, a lot of people, because thankfully the message about gratitude has gone around. People are like, oh, I do a thing where I say 3 things I'm grateful for before meals, or maybe they do that before bed, when they wake up. All wonderful. And often people are finding things outside themselves they're grateful for. So one of my reminders to my clients and my audience is always include something about yourself. When I do a guided breathing exercise with my clients at the beginning of sessions, just to put us into that space of appreciation and love, and really visualizing all that we can be. And I always, when we have hand in the heart, which is actually, the body recognizes this as a hug. And it's amazing, like we can hug ourselves. And hugging usually releases oxytocin, which is the hormone of love and belonging, right? And so we can actually do that for ourselves on a daily basis, just like, oof, I'm here, I belong. There's so many mantras that people can say, put a little sticky note on their mirror if that helps, if they're really trying to do this. Okay, I'm going to engage with this as a daily practice. There are no side effects. It's free. And watch where it goes. You do that for 2 weeks. Louise Hay has a book, something around, mirror work, change your life in 21 days. I might be slightly misquoting the subtitle, but it's something where people can really see improvement in how they act. And works of like Joe Dispenza, that's so much about like, oh, our thoughts really create our reality. You start loving yourself and doing the daily practices, whether it's the sticky note or hand on the heart, and you have some sort of gratitude, your whole body believes it too, right? And we start making choices that are a little bit different and come from a different place and are a little bit better. And even the thing that I love working with people on is to really listen to their bodies, because there are so many diets and there are so many things that people are sharing on social media and everywhere else, like do this or do that. And I think we always have to ask ourselves, is this right for me? Even my own advice to my clients, I go, is this working? How do you feel after eating or after doing certain movements? Anyway, yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah, for sure. And I would love to dive in a little bit deeper into maybe some of the practices that you do kind of teach or tell people to lean into. What are some things that people can start doing to get more into this place of truly self-love?
So when I had the mole that I mentioned, I gave it a name. I called it squammy because it was a squamous cell carcinoma. And I had to find a way to relate to it, because I was like, it's here for a reason. Maybe it has a story to tell me or something to ask me. I don't know. And so there was part of the first step for me was that acceptance and the self-acceptance. And this is reality right now. Okay, how do I get the most out of it? And I started going to the mirror and focusing on my eyes, like looking deep into my eyes and saying a positive message. And so some days that was just good morning, Thais, because that's all I could muster. Some days it was, I love you. I really, really love you. Some days it was my skin is healing every day. So I would just sort of try to override that. And I combined that with something I had heard while I was working at Ceres Community Project, where we were serving cancer patients. It was a nonprofit that I worked for. I met an oncologist who said that part of his success he attributed to this work that he did with his clients who were kids. He was a pediatric oncologist, where he would suggest that they would take these deep breaths into their belly and imagine this light growing. And then they would ask them to beam that light into the spot where they were getting treatment. And so very much like a lightsaber. And beam that and send it to the spot. And he felt like that gave them something they could do that was empowering them to be part of their healing, which is beautiful, right? And whether it was that really helped or just that it brought them to a calmer space while they were getting treatment, we can never know, but he had fantastic success. And so one day I was looking in the mirror, I was overseas at the time, and I was doing my, like, what nice thing can I say to myself today, before I go into like, why is this on my face? And I remembered that conversation and I was like, oh, wait a minute, I have something I can do. And so I started doing this breathing where I would collect all the light and I would use some of my sort of script, which when we're trying to find things we're grateful for, I've had experiences where a client would say, I have nothing that I love about myself, right? Which is so sad. And so we go into, well, can we find gratitude for all the wisdom from your ancestors, right? That's imprinted in your DNA. Can we find a gratitude for all the life that lives inside of us, our microorganisms that are helping support us and helping us thrive? can we find gratitude for the work that each single cell in your body is doing 24/7, right? To have its function, like for all these, cells that are all working in conjunction to create this body that we get to live in. So then people start finding like things, oh yeah, like they can be grateful for that, that's separate from story, right? That's just and so I started collecting that light and feeling that gratitude and just calling in the wisdom of my ancestors and all of the different things and the power of my microbiome. And I started shooting this laser beam to that spot. I did that for 2 weeks. I was using some oils too. And the little thing popped out of my hand. And it looked like nothing had ever been on my skin.
Wow.
At that time, I had set up an appointment with a surgeon because I didn't know this was going to happen. And so I still went to the appointment. I brought Squeamy to her because I saved it. I was like, here it is. Here's where it was. And she was amazed. She's like, wow, it's not very conspicuous, meaning like I can't see with her dermatoscope. She couldn't see, the weird cells on my skin. But she said, but we have to still do an operate, like we have to do surgery and remove a margin of error. And I said, well, do you think I healed myself? And she goes, oh, no, it doesn't work like that. Okay. So I went through, now I had a huge scar. I had the swollen face, the pain. It was so bizarre. But what it did is it gave me a peace of mind. And then the entire sample came back 100% clear, which was huge relief.
Yeah.
And later on, I ended up having other types of skin cancer in other places that were harder to do that work with, like somewhere on my back. But I kept using the same self-love principle and the breathing and the light beaming as I went through the other surgeries. And it was amazing. I feel like my skin healed so fast. I was kind of in awe of how much healing can happen in the body. And so I think that's the tool I want to offer is the sense of awe for all the innate ability of our bodies to heal, really trusting that. And then using that sense of awe and that gratitude for all the little things that happen in our bodies without us having to say for it to do so, to again raise that sense of gratitude and appreciation. Because when we come from that place, then we can connect more with this notion of, a bigger picture, bigger love, our soul, that we get to be in this life and take each breath. And that starts building then that new narrative that's going to replace the old narrative of, I'm not worth it, I suck, my thighs are too big, whatever, whatever, whatever. And I think, also being curious is another great tool as far as noticing how you talk to yourself. This is not something to add another layer of judgment. Oh my God, I talk to myself that way, how horrible I am. It's not that. It's having the curiosity to understand, what are some of the triggers? Like, when am I really mean to myself? For some people, it's when they're scrolling and they start comparing themselves to other people. All of a sudden, they might have been having a great day, and now all of a sudden they think they're worthless. This happens a lot, and especially now we see some of the research with teenagers, especially. So it's a thing we really can change because we can just stop scrolling. Just go, I don't scroll, or I don't compare, or maybe go and, see a few things that you need to do online and social media and then get out. Or if you catch yourself thinking thoughts about how you're not doing enough, that's the moment when you're like, you cut it and
Yep.
you put the phone down, look around. Oh no, wow, this is my life. Okay. And then 3 is, if one, we're curious and start noticing those thoughts, so that 2, we can start replacing that narrative with the helpful narrative, with, sticky notes in the mirror, anything like that, maybe a journal. That's wonderful. So first curiosity, then we can change what we discover. And then number 3 is this notion of, what are some of the practices that bring me closer to that space where I feel grateful, where I feel appreciation, so that I can grow the love from that. And I'm a big fan of breathing. I'm a big fan of joyful movement. I had a client once told me, I run every day, but I hate it. With every step, I'm thinking, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. I asked her, then why do you do it?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, because that's how I stay in shape, like that, at the end of it, I kind of feel good, but the first at least half of it is awful. And so we're like, what would it be like to replace it with something you actually enjoy doing? Because that I hate it, I hate it, I hate it is creating more stress, and it's going to counteract all the effort that you're putting into it. And so we found out, that dancing was actually something she liked, and she was still getting the cardio benefit without the thought. And so applying that in an embodied way then becomes really important too.
Yeah, I love that. And I hear that so often that people are just like, it's my routine. I do it because I know I have to. I hate every bit of it, and that can be applied to the food you're eating, the eating schedule you have, the workouts you're doing, the wake up time you have, the bed, like whatever. It can apply to anything. If you're doing something simply because you think you have to and you hate it, you're for sure not going to get the same benefits. So I think that's really something that we all need to look at with our entire life. We need to look at all the things we're doing and assess, why is this working for me? Do I like it? Do I hate it? Is it actually getting me the results I want? Where are we going with this? And lean much more into the things that bring you joy, that actually help you, that make you feel better, that make you feel good, that make you like yourself, that make you like your life. Stop doing the things that you hate
Yes.
doing. It sounds so logical when you hear it in someone else's story where you're like, well, I can tell you what to do, but it's sometimes really hard to find those things in ourselves. We can't, I love the phrase, you can't see the picture from inside the frame.
Yes.
You can always find where other people are going wrong, but it's really hard to see it in yourself. So this is where it can be helpful to talk to a coach, talk to a friend, talk to your spouse, talk to all these other people that are like, what is it that I'm doing? If you were telling me like with no shame or hurt, where am I going wrong? Tell me the honest truth. What am I doing that I shouldn't be doing? I guarantee you they could tell you. Whether or not they will or not is a different story, but we can always see it in other people. We can always see it in other people. So I agree with you 100%. Start there, really take good stock of your life and figure out all the things that are adding to your misery instead of really actually benefiting you.
Yes. And I think
So
like oh, go ahead,
you're
please.
good. Go ahead.
I think if we add to the misery, so this notion of, like we talked about esteem and respect, so self-esteem, self-respect that, contribute to that bigger self-love picture, is that, if we want to do something that's sustainable, like a lot of when I'm working with people, it's not about just do this diet for 2 weeks and then everything is okay. Like it's a lifestyle change, right? It's a process where you're really starting to see things in a different way. And then you start behaving in a different way so that then your habits, everything is contributing to your life. When we add misery to that, people don't tend to stick as long. And so then you have short-lived benefits, from whatever new thing you're attempting, because it feels awful and it feels too restrictive or too out there. And I feel like for some of the people that actually get to do it for a long time while hating it, it's really important to then explore like why, is there a sense of punishment that's in there? Because I think some of us actually grew up believing that to be healthy, you had to suffer. To be thin, you had to eat icky food. To be, there's so many beliefs that people and myself come into this work with that is really important to look at. And that's why I love techniques like EFT, emotional freedom technique, tapping, because sometimes it can uncover some of these weird messages and beliefs that are actually running in the background and stop us from making real progress.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's a powerful message. And I do think that that is a common underlying belief. People probably aren't aware of it, but that they really do feel like it has to be a misery process. You have to be hungry all the time to lose weight. You have to hate your food. It has to taste like cardboard and like all of these things. We have to hate our workouts or, and even though we may not be conscious of those decisions, it almost feels like if you're actually enjoying the process that it can't possibly be working, which is
Right.
again so counter, but I think that's our whole diet culture
Yeah.
has, given us all these false beliefs and all of these, it's going to be really hard and you just have to kind of grit and bear your way through it. And I just think it's all the wrong messaging that we've all been fed. And there's such a better, happier, more positive, easier, loving way to go through it. And so
Mm.
I love your acronym, and I want to kind of, pivot more into that, the diet definition that you have, because I think that feeds directly into this, that it's all about what you're giving to your body, not what you're
Mhm.
suffering through.
Right. It's so true, and I think diet as a daily intake of everything, it really came from collaborating with my husband. He's a somatic psychotherapist, and often we would be talking about how much he would see in his clients, how much food was influencing their state of mind. And of course, I also see that with my clients, food influencing their state of mind and their state of mind influencing their food choices. And it's the cycle. And so I love working when I work with people one-on-one. It's a minimum of a 3-month commitment because we focus on gut, heart, and mind and nutrients for those and how to work with those and optimize those and align those so that people feel more whole. And so we spoke at a conference in Italy a few years ago, and that's when the acronym came up because we were like, how do we align gut, heart, and mind? And we kept coming back to this notion, it's everything. It's not just the food that you put in your mouth, even though that's a big piece of it. It's the most intimate relationship we have with the world, right? We're getting the world out there and putting it in our bodies. And what is it? Like everything is having this conversation. And so whether we're properly digesting or not, assimilating or not, right? There's this constant conversation happening. And like, what is it? How do we want to build our bodies and ourselves? Again, coming from a place of love. That same, if the Buddha came to dinner book I mentioned, one of her questions was, when does this become me? As when we're eating, to ask that of the food. And at the time, I just thought, oh, that's it. Like I had never thought of food as that. It's just the thing that I either like or don't like, and it's becoming my very being. And so what else? What are the other things that have that influence? It's like, well, absolutely our thoughts. Everything we're thinking, our bodies are going to respond to, whether it's with a stress response or a relaxed response, or it's a way in which we're going to end up behaving so that we get to that goal or that vision of that thought. And the fact that we have all these feelings that come because we think something. It's like if I were to ask listeners right now to think of something that really, really upset them in the last month, or maybe in the last week, and then notice what happens in their bodies. It's like the thoughts will create those emotions, right? And that will change the biology. So, how important thoughts are, super important. And then how important is the media we're watching every day? Very important. I just mentioned the scrolling and the comparison thing that people can get into, and this like teenage mental health crisis that's happening partly because of social media. It's part of what we're putting in and we're letting ourselves believe about the world and about ourselves. It's movement, it's anything that might be considered inflammatory, our environments, so if there's mold, poor air quality in general, parasites, whatever. So we're just like really starting to look at life as this big banquet, the big buffet of life, and what are we choosing to put in? And at the time, my son was really little, and I remember driving him to daycare on my way to work. And I would be listening to classical music or like the most chilling, amazing thing because it was he and I in the car. And then the minute I would drop him off, I would switch over to MSNBC or, NPR and get all agitated. This was around, let's see, yeah, election time. I don't need to be specific, but I would find myself getting so irritated. And then I realized, oh, here's my daily intake of everything. I'm choosing to do something totally anti-inflammatory because I have my son in the car, whom I adore. And then the minute he's out, I'm choosing to go get all inflamed. Like, oh, what's up with that? Like, I think I can make a better choice for myself. And so I started just keeping the dial, as tempting as it was, in the right station or in the, sort of calming place until I got to work. And at Series Community Project, this is where, again, we were making meals for people on cancer treatment. One of our big uh, outlining, guidelines was that you leave everything outside the door that is concerning, worrying, upsetting, because when we step into that place, we want to bring love to everything we're doing so that our clients can feel that love when they eat the food and help their healing. And so I was like, yeah, why would I not just contribute to that all the way to work to get into that space versus switching the radio? And so it's small things that with, again, guided by that love, then we can start making a different, decision in our day. And it didn't mean that I was completely, ignorant to what was going on in the world. I could still read the paper and whatnot, but I chose my exposure to that. It did not need to be part of my daily intake of everything. That inflammatory conversation didn't need to be part of it.
Yeah, I think that's an important factor that a lot of times doesn't get talked about in the space of, health in general. When we mostly focus on diet and exercise and, these more big topics, which are huge drivers, of course. But we really do have to look at the things we're feeding our mind. It's one thing to stay up on current events, like you said, and, be well informed, especially around election time and things. Be informed on what you're voting about for sure. But you don't need to listen to that for 5 hours a day. You just
Right.
need the facts, you need the details, and you can be done. You don't need to listen to 15 different people talk about it. You don't need to hear about all the arguments and debates and all the things. Just get your facts and get out. You can make
Yeah.
your decision on way less information, I promise you. And so we really do need to look at this. And it's not just news, it's not just social media, but it's also TV shows you're watching. If you're constantly watching marriages being broken up and adultery happening and child abuse happening and murder and like all these
Mhm.
horrible things that are entertaining from a TV standpoint, you're still flooding your mind with that's reality. That's what
Right.
happens in the real world. Everybody gets divorced. Everybody cheats on everybody. Everybody gets abused. Everybody gets talked down to. Everybody gets all these things. And that's not true. That's not actually what's happening in the real world, or at least not every day, all the time to everyone. And so we
No,
really
it's
do
what
have to take
creates
a good look.
drama.
Yes.
Right.
It's
Like,
not that we can't watch those things. I'm just as guilty as the next person of watching stupid TV that's, definitely not feeding my mind, definitely not enlightening my path. We're all guilty of it, and that's fine. But we
yeah.
do need to look at how much of that and what is it making us do. If you're binge watching your favorite show and it makes you snack more, if it makes you all
Sleep
that negative
less.
self-talk, if it makes you be more lazy instead of getting your workout in, if it like whatever, if it's influencing your behaviors in a way that is not in line with your goals, you have to take a good hard look at it and see, is this really what I should be prioritizing in my life? Or can I cut back on it at least? Like, I think this is a good, important topic to talk about, that it's not just about what you're literally feeding yourself, but it's also your thoughts, the things that influence your mind, the people you hang out with, the places you go. It's all of
Mhm.
these things. We really have to look at all of it.
Yeah, so much so. And it's interesting. Like, I know people who like don't smoke, right? Are very proud of, say, certain aspects of their health, but they might always be hanging out with people who do. And it's like, great, you can still have your friends, but how much time do you want to spend in, say, the smoky environment, right? And so that can be just um, metaphor for other things that we're doing, or like we're putting ourselves in a smoky room. Like, how do we get out of it? Right? Because we wouldn't choose that smoke otherwise. So we can use that for a number of different areas of our life. And absolutely what you said about TV shows, so much so that they can start eroding our belief in like the goodness of people, right? If we're always watching the really difficult things. And it doesn't mean that we're going to get out of touch with reality. I mean, there is plenty of horrible things happening in the world, but we don't need to keep re-traumatizing ourselves every day by watching it, because it has a cost. It has a cost in our bodies. Like that's, I think, the biggest thing for me. Self-love used to be the little thing that I would like, kind of put into my work, so into everything I did, but it was never something I claimed of like, we're gonna, deepen or cultivate self-love. So I always thought, well, that's kind of a soft sell. Like people already think, well, but I do love myself, and often people I work with, like they're coming to me because they want to improve, they want to get better. They're already successful in many aspects of their lives and they want to get their body dialed in, or maybe they have um, a new lab that showed numbers kind of off. So they're really motivated to make changes. And I would just, the self-love is a little piece of it. But what I realize more and more is like how central that is and how important that is to any work that we, decide to do in the world. And how bringing it back to biology is that when there's an absence of that, and we do go into the negative spirals of beating ourselves up. I mean, how many times I myself have lost sleep over thinking like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, and I should have done this. Oh, I should have done that differently. Or, oh, how stupid did I, blah, blah, blah. That kind of communication with ourselves creates so much unease. And like I said, it will interfere with our immune system. It'll interfere with our hormones, our neurotransmitters. I mean, GABA and dopamine and serotonin all get affected when we give into those negative thoughts. And so, how do we replace that? Self-love. Like, again, as a daily practice, not something we just take for granted, but little things, little tools that we can use every day so that it becomes more second nature not to go into those trains of thought.
Yeah, it definitely is an ongoing practice. And I can see that there's a lot of tools and tips and tricks and things that people can, kind of implement into their life to make this a routine. And I know that's a lot of the work that you do with your clients. So if people are interested in learning more about you and your work and how to do all the things that you specialize in, how is the best place for them to reach you?
Find me at nourishtogether.com. That's my website. I'm on Instagram at nourish.together and on Facebook at Nourish Together as well. I have a YouTube channel that I'm just revamping right now, and I have lots of really fun interviews. And so also Nourish Together on YouTube.
Love it. Love it. So easy to remember. It's the same everywhere with the exception of a couple dots here and there, but awesome. Super easy to find you. And yeah, I hope if everyone out there is really, if you feel like you're maybe stuck or that this is your pattern, that you're stuck in negative thoughts or constantly self-loathing these kinds of behaviors, for sure, if that's you, reach out, get some help. Your life can be 100% different. But even if you feel like you've done all the great things and you're just a little bit stuck, this might just be the key to lean into and really prioritize true self-love. So I think this is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom and tips and tricks and your story with us today. I had no idea your whole cancer story. So that was great to hear and such a powerful healing story. So I think, that's really uplifting and motivating to a lot of people out there, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be here with you.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So thank you everyone for tuning in today, and we'll catch you again on future episodes. Be well and vibrant.